You walk into a room. Everyone seems confident, prepared, brilliant. And you're just hoping no one realizes you don't belong. You nod, you smile, you contribute. But underneath it all, a quiet voice whispers, "You're not really supposed to be here. They made a mistake. Any minute now, they're going to find out." Even when you succeed, you feel like it wasn't because of you. You were just lucky. You were just in the right place at the right time. You just fooled them well enough to make it this far. Sound familiar? That constant fear of being found out? That nagging doubt that you're not as capable as people think? It has a name: imposter syndrome. And here's the wild part. It affects not just the unprepared or the unsure, but the smart, the successful, the driven. People who've achieved more than most, yet feel like they're faking every step of the way. In this episode, we're going to unpack this feeling, where it comes from, why it happens, and how you can start breaking free from the belief that you're just pretending to be enough. Because maybe you're not an imposter after all. Maybe you're just someone who hasn't yet realized how truly capable you already are. What is imposter syndrome, really? Imposter syndrome isn't about lying. It's about believing that you are the liar. It's the feeling that your success isn't real, that it happened by accident, or because someone misjudged your abilities. And one day, they'll realize it. They'll see the truth you think you've been hiding. I'm not as good as they think I am. Imposter syndrome doesn't mean you're unqualified. In fact, it often shows up in people who are more than qualified. People who are high-achieving, thoughtful, deeply committed. It doesn't matter how many degrees you've earned, how many promotions you've been given, how many people look up to you. The feeling creeps in anyway. You might recognize it in moments like these. You receive a compliment and immediately downplay it. You accomplish something and attribute it to luck. You're praised in public, but secretly feel like a fraud. You set impossibly high standards just so you won't be found out. And the worst part, you feel alone in it. Because from the outside, everyone else seems confident. Everyone else seems like they know what they're doing. But here's the truth. They don't. Or at least, you're not the only one who feels this way. Imposter syndrome is incredibly common. It affects students, leaders, artists, parents, surgeons, engineers, anyone who cares deeply about doing things well. What makes it so painful is not just the self-doubt, but the belief that you're the only one who carries it. So let's name it. Let's bring it into the light. Because the moment you say, "This is imposter syndrome," you create space between you and the voice inside your head. And in that space, there's room to grow. Where does it come from? Imposter syndrome doesn't appear out of nowhere. It's not a flaw in your thinking. It's a reflection of what shaped you. For many people, it starts early. Maybe you grew up in a household where success was expected, but never quite celebrated. Where 95 out of 100 wasn't good enough. Where love felt a little more present when you achieved something, and a little more distant when you didn't. Or maybe you were constantly compared to a sibling, to the gifted student, to the person who made it look easy. And even when you did well, you learned to attach your worth not to who you are, but to what you could prove. So you began to build a version of yourself that performed, achieved, adapted, while quietly wondering if any of it was really you. School didn't help either. Standardized tests, ranking systems, constant evaluation. They taught us to chase results, not to trust the process of becoming. Then there's the culture we live in. Social media shows us everyone's best moments, the awards, the polished speeches, the big announcements, but rarely the anxiety, the self-doubt, the days they felt lost. You see their surface, but you compare it to your depth, and the gap between who you are and who you think you should be starts to feel like a flaw. Over time, this gap becomes the breeding ground for imposter syndrome, and beneath it all lies something deeper: the inner critic. That quiet voice that says, "You got lucky. You're not as good as they think. You're one mistake away from being exposed." But that voice isn't your enemy. It's a part of you that's trying, however awkwardly, to keep you safe. Safe from failure, safe from rejection, safe from disappointment. Understanding where imposter syndrome comes from doesn't magically make it disappear, but it disarms it. Because once you know the roots, you stop blaming the tree, and maybe you even start to grow something new. Why smart, high-achieving people are more prone to it? It seems backwards, doesn't it? You'd think the more successful you are, the more confident you'd feel. The more proof you collect, degrees, promotions, praise, the more certain you'd be of your worth. But for many high achievers, the opposite is true. The more they accomplish, the more they worry they don't deserve it, as if each success is just one more chance to be found out. Why does this happen? Because the smarter you are, the more aware you become of what you don't know. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, a psychological pattern where people with less knowledge tend to overestimate their abilities, while those who are more competent tend to underestimate themselves. Why? Because the more you learn, the more you realize how much more there is. So instead of feeling smart, you feel like you're always behind, like everyone else has it together, and you're still just trying to figure it out. High achievers also tend to set the bar impossibly high. They strive for excellence, but when excellence becomes the minimum, anything less feels like failure. And when you tie your self-worth to being the best, there's no room to stumble, no space to be human. So even a small misstep can feel like proof that you've been pretending all along. Then there's this. People rarely tell you how messy success actually feels. They see your polished surface, but not the fear you wrestled through to get there. So when you feel anxious or unsure or out of place, you assume that's just you, that everyone else feels certain and you're the fraud in the room. But here's the truth. The people who feel imposter syndrome the most are often the ones who care the most, the ones who think deeply, who reflect honestly, who want to do things right. And maybe feeling like an imposter isn't a sign that you're a fraud, but a sign that you're still growing. The hidden cost of feeling like a fraud. Imposter syndrome doesn't always shout. It whispers. It chits away at you quietly until one day you look back and realize how much it's held you back. You didn't apply for that opportunity because you thought you weren't ready. You turned down the compliment because it felt undeserved. You stayed quiet in the meeting because you didn't think your voice belonged. Again and again, you shrink yourself to stay safe, but safety slowly becomes small. And what's worse, no one around you can see the battle you're fighting. They see someone composed, talented, capable, but inside, you feel like you're walking a tightrope, one misstep away from everything unraveling. This constant inner tension is exhausting. You over-prepare for everything. You replay your words after every conversation. You work twice as hard just to feel barely enough. And over time, that pressure builds into something heavier: burnout, isolation, and sometimes even resentment. Because deep down, you wonder, if they really knew me, would they still respect me? And worse, do I even deserve what I've built? This belief doesn't just affect your career. It affects your relationships, your creativity, your joy. It's hard to be present when you're always performing. It's hard to feel loved when you believe they've only seen your mask. And perhaps the most painful cost is this: all the things you could have done, all the risks you didn't take, the passions you set aside, the voice you kept quiet, because you believed you weren't good enough to try. But what if that belief was never yours to begin with? How to work with it, not against it. You don't have to conquer imposter syndrome. You don't have to silence it, destroy it, or pretend it never shows up again. You just have to stop letting it lead. Because imposter syndrome isn't a sign that you're broken. It's a signal that you care, that you're growing, that you're standing in spaces your younger self never imagined you could. So how do you work with it? Start by naming it. When that voice shows up, you're not qualified. You just got lucky. Pause. Say, "That's imposter syndrome speaking." This small act separates you from the thought. You stop fusing with it. You start observing it. Then, challenge it with facts. Write down your wins. Not the big, shiny ones. The quiet, steady ones. The ways you've shown up, grown, learned, adapted. Because imposter syndrome thrives in vagueness, but shrinks in the face of truth. Practice self-compassion. Not every success needs to feel euphoric. Not every confident person feels that way all the time. You're allowed to feel unsure and still move forward. You're allowed to succeed, even while feeling scared. And perhaps most importantly, speak it out loud. Imposter syndrome loses power in the community. When you hear someone you admire say, "Yeah, I've felt that too," you realize you're not broken. You're just human. And the next time that feeling returns, because it might, you'll know how to meet it. Not with panic, but with perspective. Not with shame, but with skill. Not by proving yourself harder, but by remembering you've already earned the space you're standing in. Maybe you've been waiting for a moment when you finally feel ready. When you wake up and the doubt is gone. When you walk into a room and no longer question if you belong. But maybe readiness isn't a feeling, it's a choice. A choice to move forward even when your voice shakes. A choice to believe in your work even when your mind tells you it's not enough. A choice to show up, not as a perfect version of yourself, but as a present. You are not a fraud. You are a human. Stepping into growth, navigating complexity, learning to trust your own becoming. The truth is, everyone you admire has doubted themselves. Everyone has felt small while doing something big. So if you feel like an imposter, maybe that means you're in the exact right place. Right where challenge meets purpose. Right where your fear meets your future. And if no one's told you yet today, you're not faking it. You're becoming it.